I'm unrecognizable after covering 95% of my body in extreme tattoos. So there's a person who's basically obsessed with tattoos, spent over $50,000 covering their whole body. But let's get right into the story because I thought this would be pretty interesting. So, a tattoo fanatic is unrecognizable in old photographs before he inked nearly all of his body. And the thing is, just from like this small photo right here, yeah, like you would not be able to recognize them as the same person. Like it's crazy. So Tristan Weigelt, 25, has spent $54,031 to cover 95% of his body in tattoos, and he now looks like a totally different person just 5 years later. So, averaged out, you're roughly spending about 11,000 ish per year, right? That's a decent amount of money to be spending on tattoos. So the tattoo apprentice has undergone 260 painful hours under the needle, and just his palms, private parts, bottom of his feet, and ears free are from ink. It's kind of weird looking at myself without all the tattoos, he told the Daily Star. Now, here's the thing, this is a good thing and a bad thing. And what do I mean by this? The fact that he kind of like works somewhat in the industry as like a tattoo apprentice means that having these tattoos wouldn't necessarily bar him from making a living. Now, some clients may not necessarily go with them because maybe they feel intimidated with them. So that's something that you got to worry about. But you're also probably going to get more clients potentially because they're like, oh man, you have some crazy ink. Tell me your story. Oh, I'd love to, get tattooed by you if you're willing to get all that done, right? I get trust in my hands and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's different ways to really look at it. But basically, in his job, being like, working in the tattoo industry, that's pretty much, for the most part, the only really okay place for this to actually occur to where you're not going to necessarily lose income, right? I don't think I've ever seen anyone where they were basically fully tattooed to this extent that was not working in the tattoo industry in some form, right? Other than maybe like a pro fighter, but even pro fighters don't usually have this much of themselves tattooed. So, but funnily enough, I still feel exactly the same as before on the inside. So the American-born Tristan now lives in Copenhagen and has become something of a celebrity with a huge Instagram following. So if his Instagram following is actually really massive, he could potentially make, a livable income from that, right? And that's something that you gotta understand too. Nowadays, depending on people's social media following, or their savviness with like running ads or anything like that, you could make a living regardless of what you look like. So a lot of people stare and are pretty fascinated. My friends now say that it's almost like walking around with a celebrity. He said getting his face and head were the most painful, comparing it to being scraped with a metal brush. That does not sound appealing at all. And here's the thing, right? Like, I mean, he got a lot of work done on his face. Like, a lot. Like, one thing's for sure, this guy is definitely committed to the tattoo, I guess, lifestyle, tattoo industry. The only thing is, this is going above and beyond. So it was 6 full day sessions taken between 5 and 6 hours, and the pain was probably an 8 out of 10. is like being scraped with a metal brush. Tristan revealed his tattoos have no hidden meaning, but he was inspired by Japanese designs. To anyone out there considering a tattoo, get the tattoo you like, he said. Now, that is something that I would have to agree with him. Like, if you're going to get a tattoo, you might as well get something that you like. That being said, regardless if you like it or not, there's typically always a cost to getting that tattoo. It could come in the form of just how much money you're going to be spending on it. It could be the opportunity cost of potentially losing out on like a deal or money or whatever because of the tattoo. It could also be the cost of, potentially missing out on something because you got to sit down and get the tattoo, right? So there's always a cost to everything, and there's always a cost to getting a tattoo, some that you may not even really be aware of when you get it. So get what you love and what makes sense to you. I see so many people worried about a certain tattoo fitting them or it not being their style. If you like it, then get it. Again, I'd have to agree with that. Tristan posted before and after picture on his Instagram showing him unrecognizable after his tattoos. So nobody would have told me my tattoos would have fit me if I asked somebody 5 years ago, he said. But now, nobody can imagine me without them. And like, here's the thing, right? That's probably pretty true because for anyone that ends up like interacting with him on on a daily basis, what is normal to you is what you are basically around more often than not, right? So, for example, going to seeing basically the same cat at a gas station seems normal to you, right? But if one day that cat was replaced with, like, let's say, a hairless version of it, right? Well, now you're gonna be weirded out because it's like, oh, what's this? Like, is this cat like what is this cat? Who is this cat? Right? But it could be the very same cat, but for some reason lost all of his hair, right? But you're gonna be completely weirded out because it's not the norm, right? So if your first experience was seeing someone completely tatted and that's how you know them, like you have no previous viewpoint as to what they were like before they got tattoos, then they're going to just view it as a normal thing. They're not going to really view it as like, oh, you're so crazy for getting the tattoos. They're going to be like, hey, wait a minute, you actually got tattoos. Like you just had tattoos, right? I always known that you had tattoos. So it's just a different kind of like perspective. That being said, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I wouldn't necessarily. Well, I think it depends on how much money he potentially has made from his Instagram following, if he has made any money from it. Because if he has, then getting these tattoos financially might have worked out very well for him, right? So, for example, he spent like $54,000 and $51,031 on getting these tattoos, right? But if he was able to make that same amount of money or more from his big social media following, then really, financially, it wasn't a loss. Or another way to look at it, perhaps getting these tattoos might have got him some like really massive, like high ticket tattoo clients. Meaning, let's say him getting like a full body tattoo like this, right? Completely covering himself up with tattoos like this, right? Ends up allowing him access to people who are willing to spend big amounts of money on these types of tattoos, right? Because they're going to be like, hey, you know, I want to trust you in giving me a full body tattoo because I know you take this stuff seriously, right? So he could potentially be charging people $10,000 plus for him to give them full body tattoos per session. In that sense, because of his specific industry, this might actually be in not a bad necessarily financial decision. But here's the thing. If you are like anyone else working in any other industry, this would be probably one of the worst financial decisions you could ever make, right? Because you're literally just burning $54,000, right? But for him, because of his industry and all that kind of stuff, where potentially it might actually make him more money, it might actually give him more clients, it might not necessarily be the dumbest financial decision, right? So I hope that he has made more money because of this, so that this isn't just like money he's just putting on this thing. But here's the thing, right? If he had the money in the bank to pay for this, like if he saved up and paid for this basically out of pocket, like cash flowed it, there's nothing wrong with actually doing this financially if this is something that you want to do. Like the same way that I would explain it to someone, let's say that you are basically saving up money to buy, let's say, like your dream car, right? Now, you may not necessarily make that much money to buy the car outright right then and there, and you're not willing to get into debt. So, every year you save $10,000 or like $11,000 per year till you're able to drop down $54,000, $55,000 cash straight up to end up paying for the thing, right? Because it seems like he basically paid this every year, basically when he got the money, from what it seems like, that he got the money, then paid, right? So I think it's not a necessarily bad choice, but if it was anyone else in any other work situation, then this would probably actually be a very bad idea. Feel free to give your thoughts if you stumble upon this. I think if he ended up just cash flowing it financially, it's probably not really going to impact him really much at all, especially if during that whole time he ended up making money basically as a tattooer.